voting against it. Can you tell me why?
Sure. I believe the ordinance that we just passed is immoral, and I think it borders on constitutionality. I think that there are advocacy organizations in our community that stand up for the homeless and stand up against discrimination, and I hope that they will take up this flag and let the city know that we are going to be subject to some expensive litigation, and that money, instead of going to court and fighting our right to discriminate against people, we should be using that to invest in services for our homeless, in housing our homeless, right, and protecting our community.
And how do you feel being the only one voting against it? All the other council members voting for it. How do you feel about that?
I'm disappointed in my colleagues. I think that the community is split, but I think ultimately we all want a safe community. We want a community that we can feel secure in with our most vulnerable folks, elders, children, people with disabilities. And those people don't only live in houses, those people also live in encampments, those people also live in tents, and they need protection as well.
Okay, and then
Our quality of life officers will be doing an educational program, and the service providers that we contract with through the city or who just exist in our city will be given the information and asked to also share the information with the impacted people.
Okay, and
I'd just like to remind folks that we're all human beings. We all have the same needs, and as human beings, and we need to remember to treat each other as we wish to be treated.
okay, and actually,
I think our community is divided. We all want our kids to be safe, and it's true. Our kids should be safe at schools, at daycares, at playgrounds. But that doesn't mean that the only criminals in our community or the only people who are inherently, malintended are folks who don't live at home. So on the contrary, we know that the data doesn't say that being unhoused makes you more of a criminal.
okay, is there?
Good evening, City Council. My name is Albert Lucio, local, Company Local 405. I've been a resident of Gilroy for the last 35 years. And I've seen Gilroy grow from being a little town to a bigger town. I remember my parents and my family were field workers back in the days. I was a field worker myself. But I'm here to talk about the need of area standards and other projects that get built in the city of Gilroy, which include a livable wage, apprenticeship, local hire, and healthcare. And that is brought by a responsible general contractor. Earning a livable wage ensures that construction workers like myself can afford rent in the city, in our city, and be able to support our family and provide all the basic needs, not living check by check. Give the construction workers the opportunity to provide a higher education for their children to promote a better future, and not just a dream. Also give the general contractor, also having a general contractor that pays a livable wage, it prevents wage theft and tax fraud, which happens more than often. Having a responsible contractor ensures that construction workers have healthcare. Healthcare provided by the worker, his family, and they don't become a burden to the system. Since 80% of construction workers depend on some kind of government aid. Apprenticeship programs, training, and apprenticeship programs promotes training and education for at-risk youth, minorities, women, into a 4-year apprenticeship program. For us, it's the only opportunity to be successful. Apprenticeship program uses our construction workers to shop to the American dream. This program also provides college credits to apprenticeship that can continue to higher education and be able to obtain a college degree. Local hire promotes quality of life of the construction workers by able to spend more time with their loved ones and be part of our community. It also benefits our environment by reducing pollution and by not pushing our local workforce away. It also prevents homelessness. With the training that we do, it prevents people from living on the creek or doing this and that. We make legal ways to be able to promote and take care of our family. I would like to ask our elected officials, please promote a responsible general contractor whenever we have projects coming into our city. It's been about maybe, 15 years? I remember going to the stores and see all my friends. That's just the people, local people in Gilroy. I come here, and be honest with you guys.
Sir, I'm sorry, your time
Okay, I'll be honest, I don't
Everyone gets
recommend
3
it.
minutes.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. It's Jan Bernstein-Target.
Okay. A couple of years ago, this council had made a recommendation and put out an RFP for a safe parking program for unhoused people in Gilroy. And at that time, the RFP was such that none of the nonprofits could respond with a bid that would fit with the scope of work. And we suggested that maybe we should get a group together, created of service providers and some members of the council and city staff and the county together to talk about how we can put together what's needed to do it here in Gilroy. And perhaps there's even a surplus parking lot that the city may have someplace. So, you know, the city, if we all come together, we can get it done. And I'd like to encourage us to start thinking about how to solve problems together, right? Because we can do it if we're all pulling in the same direction. Thank you.
Des Martinez.
I just would like to say that I would like to speak on an experience of being in a domestic violence relationship and there being lack of help for individuals like myself. That leads to not having anywhere to go and being on the streets, unfortunately, being unhoused. Being unhoused leads to a lot of criminal activities that could happen to you, being a single woman, being a woman on the streets. So I would like to see our cities in California do more for the unhoused population and also the women and the children that are on the streets, because again, we don't have enough DV. We don't have enough family shelters. We don't have enough. We have nowhere to go. And the only place we have is the streets. So on behalf of the unhoused community, and especially the women and the children that are suffering on the street, I'm asking that you guys provide safe camps, harm reduction camps, stuff like this for individuals to be able to go so they will not be on the streets. That's all.
Great, thank you.
My name is Robert Aguirre, and I'm here to talk about the situation that I see happening all across this, not just the state of California, but all across the country. And that's the problem of people not having sufficient money to be able to have a place to live, people that don't have a safe place to live, people living in their vehicles, people living under bridges, along creeks, rivers, anywhere. Places that are not meant for human habitation. And that includes people that are living 3 or 4 families into one garage or one, ADU or whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of people that are suffering as a result of no fault of their own, through economic or any other kind of tragedy that can put them in this situation. And they're forced into having to live a certain lifestyle that is not their choice, that they are spiraling lower and lower as a result of many opportunities that don't come past to them. They don't have the same sort of structure that most people have. They're able to go out and get a job and do certain things. Some people do work and they're unhoused. But here's the thing. I think that all these people represent the constituents that all of you represent. And they're in every single district of each one of your districts, every area that where you live in the city. And therefore, they need to have representation. And from what I've seen, I've been here to Gilroy Council meetings several times, I've not really seen true representation. If you have something that's involving the fairgrounds, or not the fairgrounds, the garlic festival, or anything, you have committees, you have people that come together that represent the interests of those people. Where is the association, where is the council, the group, the whatever you want, a committee that represents the unhoused? And they need to have a voice, they need to be heard, and each one of you know people yourselves that are unhoused. You know people that are living in areas that shouldn't be for human habitation. All of you know somebody. And so therefore, you should reach into your heart and try to figure out what's the best way to represent these folks, what's the best way to give them a voice. Why should we be the ones to decide who and what they get, and how much they get, and when they get it? Why can't we allow them to have a voice and have a say for themselves? No different than we would want for ourselves. So thank you for that.
Great. Item 9.1, public hearings. Introduction and first reading of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Gilroy, adding Chapter 5 to the Gilroy City Code relating to banning the use of certain public right-of-ways as sleeping or living accommodations. Bryce is going to give us this staff report.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. A little bit of background, this item has been discussed in multiple meetings, both at the City Council and the Unhoused Ad Hoc Committee. 3 of the meetings specifically are about the post-Boise decision. Those are July 5th, 2022, September 12th, 2022, and March 20th, 2023. These topics include authorizing Gilroy PD to enforce no camping under certain conditions, analyzing what other cities have been doing after the Boise decision, and then discussion on draft policy points for location-based prohibition of camping areas. On May 15th, the draft works was presented to the City Council, and discussion on areas of impact was held. No changes were directed by the City Council as part of that meeting. So the proposed ordinance language applies only to public rights of way. So that's a property that's owned, managed, or maintained by the city, or where the city possesses a property interest on public use of such property, such as a right-of-way interest. It shall include but not be limited to any public street, space, ground, building, or structure. So the ordinance carves out parks and playgrounds to allow regular use of the facilities as parks and playgrounds while prohibiting the use of the property for sleeping or living accommodations. The language of the prohibition reads that no person shall obstruct by sitting, lying, or sleeping, or by storing, using, maintaining, or placing personal property on a street, sidewalk, or other public right-of-way. In the following locations, when it reasonably appears, in light of all circumstances, the participants in conducting these activities are in fact using areas of sleeping or living accommodation, regardless of the intent of the participants or the nature of any other activities in which they also may be engaging. This applies to within 500 feet of any park or playground in this section. This prohibition applies all year, overnight, on any weekends and weekdays, even when such facilities may generally be considered closed. For the other public rights of way, the prohibition is that no person shall obstruct by sitting, lying, or sleeping, or by storing, using, maintaining, or placing personal property on the street, sidewalk, or other public right-of-way in the following locations. There's 8 of them. First, in a manner that impedes passage as provided by the Americans with Disabilities Act. 2, within 500 feet of any school or daycare facility. This prohibition likewise applies all year, overnight, and on any weekends or weekdays when such facilities may be generally considered closed. 3, within 100 feet of critical infrastructure, including water wells, storm drain basins, railways, bridges, and other overpasses. Item 4 is within 10 feet of any operational or utilizable building entrance, exit, driveway, or loading dock, and within 5 feet of any fire hydrant, fire plug, or other fire department connection. 6, in a manner that obstructs or unreasonably interferes with the use of the right-of-way for any activity which the city has issued a permit. 7, in a manner that obstructs any portion of any street or other public right-of-way open to use by motor vehicles, including any portion thereof marked as a bike lane. And last 8, city creeks and creek embankments within Gilroy city limits. On this map is a depiction and visualization of the city's prohibited areas under this ordinance. Charter schools and daycare centers obviously represent the largest area. Each of these areas indicated in red fall under that prohibition area. Penalties under this ordinance: misdemeanor is a penalty identified if a person willfully resists, delays, or obstructs a city employee from enforcing the section, or willfully refuses to comply with being requested to do so. All other violations of the section, like all others in the City Code, are enforceable through infraction or by administrative citation. The overall impact area, the amount of the city that falls within the prohibition area is 24.4%. Refinements to the map reduce the percentage area coverage down from the 31.6% previously discussed. That means that 75.6% of the city area, the total city area, does not fall under this ordinance. Or does not fall under the prohibited area of the ordinance. Enforcement: upon adoption, the qualified officers and community development will engage a local service providers group and conduct outreach during the 30-day ordinance waiting period to connect those within the prohibited areas to agencies that provide housing services and supplies. The intent is to provide maximum time for accessing services and keeping voluntary compliance. If adopted at the June 19, 2023 meeting, the ordinance will become effective 30 days later, July 19th. Alternatives, council may choose to reject or modify the ordinance. Should council decide to modify the ordinance, the introduction process will be restarted with a new introduction first reading. Fiscal impact, there's none to adopt the ordinance, but enforcement would be carried out with existing staffing and fiscal resources. So no budget action is being requested. So the recommendation is for a motion to read the ordinance by title only and wait further reading of the ordinance, and to introduce the ordinance of the City Council of the City of Gilroy, adding Chapter 5 to the Gilroy City Code, relating to banning the use of certain public rights of way of sleeping rooms and accommodations. And that concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Bryce. Okay, before we continue, I meant to say before, I can still say it now, that before we get started into discussion or public comment, I would like to ask that if there is any council member who feels that they may have a conflict with this agenda item for whatever reason that might lead you to recuse or abstain from voting, if you would please say so now, so that if you would please say so now, right, not when we get to the end. If you feel that you have that. I'm not suggesting anybody does. I'm just saying that if you do, and that you think it might lead you to not being able to vote, if you would please leave the dais. Okay. All right. Thank you, Bryce. Okay, do we have any questions of Bryce at this point, or may I go to public comment?
I have a question.
Okay, Councilmember Armendariz.
Thank you. Can you hear me better?
Yes.
I don't want to turn on the speaker, but do I need to put the audio? My question is, in the equation, in terms of what percentage of the property will be enjoyed within our city limits and which isn't, it comes to about 75%, is that true?
Correct, about 75% would not fall under the prohibition areas.
Okay. Of the 75%, what percentage is private property? Because
So that we don't have a calculation separating that, just because of we have a tax exception doing that, so we did by total area. But there is area within the prohibition areas that are residential or business property. So the 75, the percentage for both include residential and business.
And so any of those properties, business and residential, as private property can be enjoyed. There could be no trespass orders against anyone, right? So anyone who owns private property can ask or can enjoin somebody from trespassing on their property, correct?
Or they can take all authority within their rights as property owners to address the trespass.
So I think my next question then is for Andy, did we have to come up with that equation to make sure that we were still falling within the law that we're getting very close to violating in terms of voicing?
If I may, Madam Mayor and members of the council, it is desirable in a law like this, of course, not to ban public camping, which is not what this ordinance does. It bans public camping in certain locations, and therefore it is important to show, as we discussed before, that there are in fact locations that are not banned. I think whether this percentage is one way to express one thought about it. It's not the final. It's not the final and only way one can look at it. However, it's kind of like, as we talked about some time ago, like regulating First Amendment bookstores or things like that. You have to allow certain areas for them, and in this ordinance, the intent is not to prohibit camping throughout the city.
But by including, I think it feels very much, not only just inhumane, right, but also disingenuous to include that number without figuring out which percentage of that property is private, because you could still prohibit people, you could still put no trespassing signs on private property, and the city has no control over that. So I'd like to see we refine this, if it moves forward, to a more accurate number where the public and the city has, which is germane to the city. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Hilton.
Thank you. So this first question was for the city attorney. So I was looking back at, because we've had this meeting for a long time, different months. At the March 20th meeting, you had mentioned how you removed the Creeks location from the draft ordinance because of current litigation over Public Records Act that we were included in from a 2018 encampment sweep where we were providing security for Valley Water. You had said if we were looking to add that back in there, that you would look at the ramifications, if we placed it back in there. So I asked this question on May 15th as well, but this current ordinance, do you still feel comfortable defending the city in regards to what potentially could be approved tonight?
The basic answer is yes. As I've explained before, the parameters of regulating this kind of thing vary, and they are not necessarily set in stone by the courts. And this is an ongoing matter that has been litigated in different cities. With respect to creeks, though, the goal was that the city would not be responsible for enforcing camping bans if there are such on creeks that are not owned by the city itself. And so that's how this is written.
Okay. Bryce, this question would be for you. Do we still feel comfortable that there are 75 to 100 unhoused in the creek? That's what was reported a few weeks ago. Do we still feel it's that same number? And do we still feel like we have enough resources and we're ready over that 30-day period to get them housed?
So that was an estimate, it was probably by officers based on experience. And again, it's a rough estimate, which is why there's such a broad range. As far as resources, we'll engage the service providers as best we can to engage that, but that's enforcement is something that's going to be dependent on us, the qualified officers, to engage and try to get voluntary compliance. But it's utilize the resources that we have the best we can, but I can't give a sort of guarantee.
Understood. And then the map, we had talked about the GIS map, whether that would be available to the general public, those that are unhoused, like as a tool to be able to provide, because the chief talked about taking this as a compassionate, common sense approach, education, so that way that individual would know, well, I can't be here, and they won't play this game where they keep going to other places that they wouldn't be allowed, but they would actually know, kind of what Councilmember Ramirez was talking about, they would actually know where they can go. Is that going to be still available?
Yeah, so the map that was provided, so this map here, this is a rough one using Google Earth. Speaking with the GIS technician, what they'll do is once the boundaries are set, they will create static maps at that point. It will be a higher quality and be zoomed in close enough to better identify as far as where those boundaries are, where those prohibitionary boundaries are within the city. And that will be those as handouts that our life officer moves with the website.
And ones that we could access too, right? So anybody would know. My last question is that we talked about conversations with Valley Water and Caltrans, right, our other partners. And we know in the past that sweeps don't help either of our agencies. They cost a lot of money, disrupt a lot. And you had mentioned that if this goes through, that you would be doing those reach out. Like, is that like a staff to staff? Is that like a study session? Like, how do you look at that outreach happening beyond just sending an email and saying, hey, we're going to be doing this? There's a potential that you could have people move into your area. How are we going to work cooperatively?
Yeah, so we're reaching out to, there's a counterpart in Valley Water that we're working with on an earlier issue as well. And so we'll be reaching out to them to proceed through their respective channels to make sure that we're following their communication patterns within the organization.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to Councilman. I'm going to go to Councilmember Tovar because Councilmember Brown. Okay, Councilmember Tovar.
Thank you, Mayor. And Bryce, this might be a question for Chief Espinoza. It's regarding the enforcement. And first of all, before I ask my question, I want to thank everyone who reached out to me in regards to the questions and the concerns. And Chief, I had a chance to read this several times and talk to a lot of folks. And the one thing that kept coming up is the enforcement component. And in reading, obviously reading the report, what I read was that this ordinance is not to criminalize the unhoused, obviously, and it doesn't change or limit the amount of types of services that they can and deserve to have, obviously. And in reading this, and I think we've had this discussion, obviously, it's simply about creating a barrier around our schools, bridges, and creeks, obviously, for the safety of our children. But what kept coming back up is the enforcement component of it and how that kind of will play out. So, we had this discussion already, but maybe you can share that with the public in regards to what would happen if this does pass, move forward, and if there are unhoused that are in the designated areas, what's the process, and how involved will our quality life officers going to be involved? Because in reading this and talking with you and others, obviously, This can be an opportunity for us to work even more closely with the unhoused folks and try to provide them with the services that they need. But if you didn't walk us through that, appreciate it.
Yeah, the approach we've been using, this is kind of more of a cooperation in education, and we've reached out in any particular area with a concern has been identified via a complaint or member of the community. And so our community engagement team, our quality of life officer, will go out there and offer to connect them with a local service provider. Certainly there are some individuals that just don't want the services, and so a different avenue is taken with them. If this ordinance is enacted and it becomes a misdemeanor, unless that individual has an arrest warrant or any prior matters, they're not physically going to get taken into custody. It will be issued an administrative citation, and then post a citation, and that should determine whether or not these types of matters are going to be heard once a month as a report, and whether or not they're going to be offered the opportunity to go to a forced diversion program or seek services in return, like we've done in the past with community. And so that's yet to be determined. But that's the approach. The approach will be to seek cooperation through education, but certainly there are those that we will have to take a different approach with.
Okay, Councilmember Armendariz.
My question is for Bryce. Again, Bryce, how many cities in our county have similar ordinances, and what kind of actual and successful mechanisms do they have for enforcement? Because I was reached out to by council members and the mayor from our surrounding cities who say that they don't have an enforcement mechanism that works or that isn't pending litigation right now.
I'm not aware of a city in the county that has this ordinance.
None?
Not specifically this way.
Speakers, Deborah Flores, Vanessa Asper, TJ Napiha.
Well, it's 2.5 minutes, so I'm going to speed read. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to address the proposed ordinance prohibiting the use of public rights-of-way as sleeping or living accommodations, specifically within 500 feet of the school. I support this ordinance and urge you to pass it at your next meeting. For many years, Solarstone Middle School and Gilroy Prep School have been impacted by homeless encampments with as many as 75 homeless individuals living nearby. These individuals have engaged in these behaviors. They behave erratically, frightening children, been partially clothed, relieved themselves, started fires, used profanity, and leered at young girls as they walked home, among other behaviors that I don't have time to talk about. In addition, the district had spent $110,000 to clear the encampment next to Gilroy Prep School. In using some district funds, we were able to get a grant, and I don't have time to go through that. But those funds should have been directed towards the educational needs of our students, not cleaning up with homeless encampment. An incredible amount of staff time was devoted to that and continues to this day, monitoring the site. I know that the homeless issue is a complicated one requiring solutions that balance the needs of our homeless population with the needs of the community. However, I'm here to represent the needs of our children and youth, and that should be a top priority in my mind, and that we need to put their needs first. It's our obligation as a community to do everything we can to keep our children safe, including from those kind of behaviors while they're walking to and from school, in school, and as I've already enumerated. One of the district's top priorities is to provide the safest environments possible for our students and staff. We've implemented numerous programs to keep them safe. This ordinance will add another important layer of protection at these schools. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here.
I want to start by saying two things. One, to follow up to Ms. Flores' comment, I also prioritize the safety and wellness of children in our community. And there are children who are living in homeless camps. And we have an obligation to them, just as we do to the children of homeless. Under enforcement on the proposed recommendation, it lists service providers contacting individuals within 30 days through the quality of life officers. Nobody has contacted the service providers from the council or city staff to ask us if we can. And the answer is we cannot. There is not staff. The Compassion Center, St. Joseph's, myself, and Pissed Off all wrote all council letters a letter. We do not have capacity. There are not resources. There is no shelter. So I'm not sure how that enforcement is going to work. Second of all, we have an entire network of providers that meet every month with city staff on city staff time and the quality of life officers. Nobody from the council or the city asked this service provider committee that meets every month for years on end, hey, what could we do about this? What are the solutions? Why are we meeting every month on unhoused issues if we're not a part of the city's solution finding? There was a gentleman who spoke at the beginning of the meeting from one of the local unions. That's where our solutions lie, in bridging the income disparity in Gilroy, the housing disparity. 36,000 Gilroy residents are on Medi-Cal. Does our housing look like it reflects that? It does not. Does our housing policy reflect that? It does not. I'm frustrated when I look at camps also. I am very frustrated because we have failed members of our community. This council represents our whole community, not just those with houses. We have failed members of our community, and I ask that we do better.
TJ, someone named TJ? Okay.
It's easier than my original name. Hi, I'm TJ. I have I'm just going to do this real quick. Klein, thank you for very much for coming out. I really appreciate it. I didn't get to see you, but I appreciate it. Second of all, as the lady just said just earlier, is there a place for us to go? All I hear is the negative, and if we don't have a place to go, this is going to continue. And yes, I agree with the woman. I've been in the system for 10 years. It's failed us. I'm an instructional associate. And for the parents in the room, I agree. And children do come first. I've been doing it for 20 years. And I still held my job. And still was homeless for 10 of those years. Long and the short of it, if we don't have solutions, how are we going to change things? We talk about being Gilroy strong. We're not. Thank you.
Robert Weaver.
Good evening. I want to compliment the council of the city for having to endeavor to take this item up for consideration. It's a topic that's highly controversial. I want you to think clearly tonight as you're deliberating and think about all the people who aren't here, the parents, the people who live here, who are going about their daily lives, who are looking to you for solutions. This kind of a discussion often brings out the more extreme elements in our community to advocate for their position. I would like you, during your deliberations, to think a minute, close your eyes, and think about Gilroy, all the way from Gavilan to Christopher, from the wineries to Old Gilroy. Think about those people who aren't here tonight, who you should be thinking about as you do your deliberations. It has been said that good governance is the effective use of taxpayers' money for return on investment. And what we have seen from federal, state, and local is failure, yet we still reward them. Perhaps if we were to take and have a slightly different approach and have a articulable or demonstrable or significant change in the homeless solution, we should consider rewarding those folks. But to give money to the same people for no benefit, no change, you're rewarding failure. So please think about all the people who aren't here. You're working for them too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff Morris. Please go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. You've got a really tough decision ahead of you. I'm Jeff Worth. I'm a concerned citizen. I happen to be chairman of the Gilroy Downtown Business Association, and I'm here to talk about the homeless situation in Gilroy. While I appreciate the city's attempt to deal with the homeless problem in our parks and the public areas, I'm concerned that our downtown area is being left out of the discussion. There have been several incidents that I am aware of where some homeless individuals have threatened, frightened citizens and members of the business community, including incidents of indecent exposure and horribly aberrant behavior. I do not deny that these individuals oftentimes have mental health issues and drug issues that need help. They seriously need our help. However, our citizens also have rights, and they do need to not bear the brunt of these actions, making them fearful to come downtown and make it harder for businesses in the downtown to survive. So please do not fail to include our downtown business when you're considering the policies to address these actions of the homeless population in our community. Thank you.
My name is Herman Garcia, founding president of CHEER, and I only have one message for you, and it's the most important message for the entire community. The 4 essential elements required for life on this earth: water, air, soil, and fire, the sun. If one of those essential elements is missing, we all die. And everybody requires quality drinking water, including the homeless. So your #1 priority should be to protect our water resources with this ordinance. And last I heard, homeless also drink water. So please make sure that you consider that one most important message: protection of our water quality. Thank you.
Followed by Linda Beach. Casano.
Well, we know we've had a homeless problem, a serious homeless problem for over 35 years. And unfortunately, the feds, state, county, and even cities have not solved it. And I would sadly say there's not one person in this room who can solve it. It is a very complex issue. And as I was reading through the emails that you received for tonight, one of your nonprofits said, homeless, they have been treating the homeless here in Gilroy for 35 years. PTSD, anxiety, addiction, untreated mental health is a major cause of addiction. Providing a home by itself is not the solution, but we don't even have that solution. We, as a board, as a school board, are responsible for the safety of 10,000 students. They are also your constituents. Of those 10,000 students, about 200 are homeless. They reflect 8,000 families. We are the largest employer in Gilroy with 1,100 employees. They also come under our safety net and your constituents. I don't have answers for the homeless. I wish I did. You wish you did. But the bottom line is we have to protect our students, and I ask you to seriously look at this. And if you change it, please keep schools in. Thank you.
Dear members of the City Council, I am Hilda Aguirre, proud principal of Ascension Solosano Middle School, and here tonight to address the growing concern that has been brought to my attention by my parents and staff members. As you may be aware, there has been an increase of the number of homeless people around our campus, and this has raised concerns about the safety of our students. While we understand that the homelessness is a complex issue that requires a comprehensive solution, we cannot ignore the impact that it has on our school community. Our students and staff have reported feeling unsafe, uncomfortable when walking to and from school, and we have seen an increase of incidents of vandalism and theft on our campus. We believe that it is the responsibility of the city to ensure the safety of our students and staff. And we are asking for your help in addressing this issue. We would like to see the ordinance prohibiting the use of public rights, sleeping or living accommodations, especially within the 500 feet of schools, be passed. We understand that this is a difficult issue and that there is no easy solution. However, I believe by working together, we can find a way to ensure the safety of our students while also addressing the needs of our homeless population. I urge you to take this issue seriously, to work with us to find a solution that works for everyone. Our students deserve to feel safe and secure in their learning environment, and we are counting on you to help us make that reality. Thank you for your time and attention to this matter.
Thank you for being here. Okay, the next slide.
My name is Susan Mister, and I live in unincorporated Gilroy, where my neighborhood has homeless living under a bridge. I appreciate the attention this concern is getting, but I truly think it's just another costly Band-Aid fix. When Johnny Camus was running for supervisor, he had a concept that would utilize the new county facilities in Morgan Hill and Gilroy to treat and prepare the 42% alcoholic drug dependent and 35% mentally disabled homeless for a future. Not only would this get 75% off the streets, but prayerfully prepare them for a future living within society. Since Mr. Camus was not elected, I would like to suggest to all of you, especially to you council members Armendaris and Hilton, to speak to your friend and fellow Democrat, Sylvia Arenas, to consider a program such as this. There are some that don't want to live in a home, but would rather depend on local handouts from local organizations. But I would be more than willing for my tax money to go to helping those that want help, rather than throwing money under the bridge, literally.
Joseph Robinson, Ron Kirkish, followed by Jan Bernstein-Charlie. Yes.
So here we are again, just extending the disingenuous approach. Really what this is all about is that Boise decision, which says that, you can't remove an encampment without providing some kind of shelter, but you have to have something in mind. And they thought that would tie their hands behind their back because they want to do something, a little bit more barbaric to the poor. And it's just galling to hear, all of these educators and administrators come up and admit that yes, there's some people are homeless and blah, 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 but we have to do something around the schools. I think that we have to actually lift a finger or two to do something about the homelessness. And I hate to hear all of that. I hate to hear all of, frankly, the phony crocodile tears. And so I'm going to take a moment to not be phony and talk about the fact that Gilroy has a long history of having right-wing groups in it. And if there's a new book out called Birchers about the John Birch Society, and I think people should read about it as they're appealing to the council. They should know that the John Birch Society has a presence in Gilroy, and there are other right-wing groups that do too, and that they don't have any interest in any of the soft treatment of homeless people that they would accuse us of. But they have to do that in order to keep their respectability. Same with those people who are coming here from the schools. Thank you.
Mayor, City Council, community. I think most of the issue is circulated around the Enos Creek area. Obviously, to me, that's the prime problem, where we have, like we said, 70 people, at least, maybe more, camping in there. A couple weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago or so, the restroom at Christmas Hill Park was burned down. We don't know who did it, but we know that there's a lot of homeless in that area. We also had a major fire, well, not a major fire, but a grass fire. When I spoke to the captain of the fire department, I asked him, is there homeless in there? Because Ron, there's a ton of homeless encampments in there. And though they can't say that it was homeless, it was in that area. Today, I was informed that there was a fire underneath the, in the area, grassy area, by the 10th Street Bridge again, that there was homeless in there and a fire was there. I drove by with my wife to go to Walmart and we saw them, and they confirmed that there was a fire in that area. The Uvis Reservoir, or the Uvis Creek area, should be a preserve for animals like bobcats, snakes, lizards, for birds of prey. It shouldn't be molested by people in there starting fires, by people in there chopping down trees. I sent you all some pictures of that. I took fire pictures, another individual took the issues, the picture with the gentleman holding the axe chopping down trees in that area. That's a preserve. Herman just spoke. He's worried about our fish, our steelhead.
Time, I'm sorry, the 2 minutes. Thank you, though. I would ask everyone to please be respectful. When someone is speaking, that is their opinion, that is their time. It is not for others to criticize what somebody else would like to say. Thank you. Okay? Yeah?
I think I'm next.
Yes, you are next.
Thank you. You know, I raise kids here in Gilroy, and the safety of schools, the safety of kids, that's paramount for all of us. You know, this ordinance doesn't do what it pretends to do, and that's what I'm concerned about. There's a presumption that homeless people are dangerous. So therefore, we're going to remove all of them. Could there be some people who are homeless who are also dangerous? Yes. And you know what? A Gilroy resident who lived in a really nice house was arrested the other day for his role in a shooting with a road rage incident. But we're not evacuating his entire neighborhood on the concept that everybody who lives there should be presumed guilty, right? I was raised at a time when we had this quaint idea about presumption of innocence, right? It's old-fashioned. It's in this document, you might have read it, the Constitution. And I know every single person up here took an oath of office in which you promised, you swore, not to grudgingly acquiesce to the Constitution, but to uphold and defend it. That means even against opposition. That means you want you to do the easy thing and pretend something is what it isn't. You know better. Go home and look in the mirror, right? Go look at who you see there. You know what you have to do.
All right, thank you. Next speaker is
County Homeless Union, California Homeless Union, National Union of Homeless, part of the Poor People's Campaign, and National Call for Moral Revival. I'm calling to ask for your vote against this item. It is open discrimination at its finest that everybody does. You know, you think about like the Beatitudes. I mean, I grew up being a Christian, and that actually drove me and compelled me to do this work because there are people suffering, and your mission field is right outside the front door. There's so much need in the world. So my question is, where do they go? If they don't belong there, where do they go, Gilroy? Where do they belong? They need to be somewhere. I mean, I'll throw out there 400 square feet in the structure. There's trailers, there's running water, electricity. You know, we want everyone to be safe, right? And there's even, like was mentioned, children who are homeless too. So those are vulnerable, completely innocent people. What are you going to do for those folks? And how do we maximize this and make it scalable toward functional zero? If the behavior is drug addiction and, you know, indecent exposure to these things, you know, walls. Everything that happens right next door to you is happening outside. It's just that they don't have walls to cover it. You know, what they need is a door that locks and a roof, somewhere to be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So the ultimate question is, where do they go? If you really want to solve it, then compartmentalize it so that they're somewhere. Please, stop the screams.
Thank you. Next speaker is Linda Layton.
Robert Aguirre, Linda Lee.
All right, I find it very interesting that the map shows these areas where people aren't allowed, thank you, red lines, okay? Does that bring back any kind of thoughts or memories about redlining, about how we keep people out of certain areas, or we confine people to certain areas? I think that's what you're doing here. And I think you're going to end up on the wrong side of history when later on they find out that this council actually voted to redline people and not allow certain people to be in certain areas. That was proven to be a big mistake, and many statues of people that were in support of that have been taken down. So I ask all of you to just search yourself and find out yourself if you think that you want to be on the side that will come down in history of people that actually persecuted, that went against people and not allowing them to have a peaceful place to be. You talk about danger. Just before getting up here, I ran Megan's Law. There are 418 registered sex offenders living in your community. 112 of those are in violation. If you want to be concerned about people that might threaten you or your children, go look up these people, okay? Because they're more likely to do something against your children or your wife or your whoever your people that you love, more so than people that are only trying to survive. People that are living outdoors, that are there, again, against their own will, they have no other place to go, and this is their lot in life right now. And so, rather than try to criminalize them, push them away as to either restrict them to certain areas or ban them from certain areas,
I'm
the way
sorry.
society is done.
Time is up, and thank you. Point taken. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Linda Layton, and I'm going to try not to cry, but I'm one of those homeless people who speak up. I'm going to read from this thing, though. I've done some great things in my life. There was a project here in Gilroy when I first got back here that was a Good Samaritan project. I was one of 7 women who graduated out of 2,000 people. I'm one of 7 women who graduated that program. It was a Good Samaritan project. And out of the 7 women, I was one of 2 who founded or put together the first women's support group that was registered here in this town. As soon as I graduated, that all ended. Nobody followed our footsteps to keep it going. I don't have any felonies. I've never been really in trouble to per se so much, you know. But now I'm afraid I'm going to be cited. I'm going to be in trouble for not having a home. You say you have this police that are now, that's called, what are they called? The quality control people. This quality control group that you have, one of these officers told me when I tried to make a report of something that was done to me, he told me to use street justice. Now, when do you hear that? I have to use my own type of justice instead of, because I'm not counted as everybody else to have the police, you know, to do what they're supposed to do for me. Because they put me into a group with everybody else. Let's see, also, I heard in the last meeting that they were saying that first it was about the water contamination. I believe I heard that the contaminated water was from years ago, and it was the couple of the top watersheds, not the downtown watersheds. And so that wouldn't be the people, that would be probably agriculture, I don't know. But anyhow, let's see, I have little notes that I don't know what to do. I guess that's all, I don't know. I'm just frustrated, I'm frustrated, thank you.
I am Kirsten Carr. I am a Gilroy resident as well as a representative of Navigator Schools. We're the charter management organization that Gilroy Prep School belongs with our charter management organization. We as an organization are committed to improving our communities through education. We do that by providing a strong foundation for our students to succeed in high school, college, and beyond. To do that, we need them to be able to learn in a safe environment. We need our families to feel safe as they're walking their students to school. We need our staff members to feel safe while they are teaching. You heard Dr. Flores talk about some of the things that have happened over the last few years with the fires, indecent exposure, drug use, We have now had to hire our own security guard. This is money that is not going into our classrooms anymore. We appreciate all of the decision you have before you. We understand the complexities, and we do urge you to please vote in support of this ordinance. Our students, our families, and our community deserves it. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Tristia Bauman. I'm a Gilroy resident. I also have 17 years of legal experience focused primarily on combating policies that criminalize homelessness. The majority of the time that I have been an attorney, I worked at the National Homelessness Law Center, where I studied 187 cities' policies since 2006 and tracked the failure of those policies like the proposal as written before this council, that have not only subjected cities to expensive litigation, but failed to achieve any constructive policy goal. That office is the office that filed Martin v. City of Boise. It was my office that won that case, resulting in the binding Ninth Circuit precedent that has been the focus of this council's discussion around how to regulate public space. I also launched the Housing Not Handcuffs Justice Network, which is a network of litigators across the country working to combat laws that criminalize homelessness. I'm currently the directing attorney of housing at the Law Foundation of Silicon Valley, the largest provider of legal services here in this Santa Clara County. I give you my background to say that as written, and it should be clear to this council, as written, this policy does expose this city to expensive litigation for violating multiple constitutional rights of unhoused people, including the 8th Amendment. And I know that I have only a brief moment, so I'll be very clear. This policy, as written, targets the same conduct that was at issue in Boise. It would be enforced against people that do not have access to housing or shelter alternatives. The proposal seems to hinge on the fact, referencing a single line in a footnote of the Martin decision, that there may be spaces outside of the banned areas where people can be, which would lead to theoretically a conclusion that people are not being punished for their status as unhoused people. But this council has not been presented with any public information showing where people can be. In fact, that's what you've heard from the members of the audience. People do not know where they can be.
I'm sorry, your time is up. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Followed by Des Martinez, followed by Sonina Jacobson, followed by...
I would say that listening to everybody, I heard a lot of support, but I also heard a lot of complaints with no solutions given to you guys. So I want to give you guys some solutions. It's called Resources for Harm Reduction. It is, and I heard you guys do that today, great. That's amazing, thank you guys for doing that. But resources, affordable housing. You need transitional housing. We need housing and shelters for women and children, or children with families. We need shelters for people that are coming out of rehab. You want them to go to rehab? Well, where are they going after they get out of rehab? They're going back to the streets where they're going to have to use substance abuse again, all over again. We need mental health services provided for individuals. We need housing after they go to mental health services. As long as there's no option of sleeping indoors, the government cannot criminalize unhoused people for sleeping outdoors on public property on the false premise that they had a choice in the matter. I'm listening to a lot of violations, you guys, and I'm concerned for Gilroy because, like the lady said before me, you guys are setting yourselves up. And I don't know if you guys don't have an attorney here, but I would think that the city attorney would look into the lawsuits that happened. LA started this, right? Everybody's falling. I mean, your ordinance reads like the LA, but did you know that LA got sued after the fact? And I see you looking at the time, so let me go ahead and talk real fast, because I don't think you're paying attention to me, sir. So LA and Chico, look into the Chico one. Chico got sued for this also. This should be a concern to you guys, because even though these have been enforced in other cities have been sued, they have won. Not only that, there are pending lawsuits that are going on in other cities right now. So I would be concerned, Mayor, I would definitely be concerned, and I would look into these lawsuits, and I would definitely speak to my city council about finding other solutions. There is nothing that we can do without having a place to go.
Thank you.
I'm a mother of a stepson, 6 years old. This was our third year living in Gilroy. We did not know what we were walking into, walking my son up and seeing the encampment, the fires, everything that everyone's been talking about. I am very sympathetic to people going through a hard time. And I do believe more help needs to be out there. Kids, ours that have homes and those that don't, every single person needs to be safe. The women are not protected at night. They're being raped. Something needs to be instilled. Doing nothing is not helping. My son goes to Tiny Tots daycare, which they have belligerent homeless constantly trashing. He also goes to Gilroy Prep. As I've said, I've personally been harassed by an angry, aggressive man. Terrified to walk my son to school. Anxiety-ridden on what next door post I'm going to get. Walk up to pick up my son to see an officer politely asking someone, please, can we just go this way? Him screaming behind my son's classroom. Say this person has a weapon and pop something off. I'm supposed to just trust that this person is safe. We need to focus on the children. And yes, also use the nonprofits to your advantage to get help to people that need it. Use them. Use your power to get what we all want. Safety for all, everyone. And yes, kids are a priority for all, like everyone.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker is Sally Ramirez, and then Valentin.
This ordinance really does nothing to remedy the situation that we have. I ask you all of you up here, to remember your Christian values when you take a vote on this ordinance today. All of you sit up here as elected officials who have taken the oath to uphold the Constitution, to serve the residents of Gilroy. Some of you, as you go to church, claim to be Christians. Yet this ordinance, like if you vote on this ordinance, you are turning your face on other human beings who are less fortunate than you, and that's to be shameful. A place to sleep, food in your belly is an essential. It's as essential as the air we breathe. I'm sorry, but I'm having trouble breathing. Being poor, being unhoused is not a crime. Officials pretending Gilroy has no responsibility to be unhoused is a crime against humanity. You have taken an oath to protect the citizens of Gilroy. The unhoused are residents of Gilroy. If in your life as a Christian or your position as a city council person, you cannot protect all Gilroyans, then resign. Like I said at the beginning, I ask you to use your Christian values when you vote for this, when you are protecting the unhoused who are there, and not choice, but because they don't have the same means of quality of life that you people up here do. You know, these are human beings that you, some of you probably went to school with some of them, because they are Gilroy residents. That's what I have to say. Thank you. Sorry to talk.
Thank you.
My name is Valentina Renales. I am one of the ones that brought this, I believe it was 6 months ago, in front of you guys to talk about this. As much as I am an advocate for the houseless, I'm also a system impacted myself. I have lost both parents from addiction. My brother is currently homeless, struggling with not only drug addiction but mental health. In 2001, they were writing songs about this particular matter. Unfortunately, like drug addiction and mental health, research and successful drug policy show that treatment should be increased, law enforcement decreased while abolishing mandatory minimum sentences. Now, with that said, we need to do something for this community. I was here when I was 14 years old. I'm 44. We didn't have alcohol and drug programs. We didn't have homeless. San Jose has the same problem. Kid Collegiate just was in front of the board, students saying, hey, we need to do something. We have people slamming in the bathrooms. My buck stops when it comes to kids. The stuff that those kids at that school were exposed to through the fence is asinine. And as much as we want to go back and forth, we need to realize we got to do something to put in place to protect the barrier of the kids. The fact, I brought this up, the fact that we deal with this over here, there's a park up by Luigi Aprea, like there's a park there. I don't see homeless there. It wouldn't happen on that side of town, but yet we tolerate it on this side of town. This community deserves better. I'm not bashing the houseless. I'm not bashing this community. Gilroy needs to do better. What I'm saying is we got to draw the line and we got to start somewhere of having the bare minimum of our students deserve better in this community. Like whether it's 500, whatever we agree on, getting our students protected so that they have a way to and from school that's not interrupted with all this unnecessary stuff. And everybody that's here advocating for the kids, man, I hope I see you at the school board meeting too, because our kids matter.
Okay, by Jose Montez and then Gary Walton.
You know, I've been homeless twice in my life, but I never disrespect property. Being homeless is not a crime. Being poor is not a crime. But it is a crime for the homeless defecate in front of your building. It is a crime when the homeless break into your property and you call the police and there's nothing they can do. Because by the time the police come, it's probably 10 or 12 hours later because it's not an emergency, because life is not a threat. If you want to put money into homeless, I understand it's a very sensitive issue, but you'd rather put it in homeless or you put it to children. There's one issue that nobody spoke about, but we tried to box the homeless all, put them all in one basket. There's some homeless that really need help. We need to help them. But there's some homeless, they choose to be homeless and they don't want help. So what do you want to do about that? And those are the homeless that cause a lot of problems in our community, cause problems to our property. If we continue the way we're going, well, soon we're going to be homeless ourselves because they're depriving pretty much our property rights. We can't even list our buildings because they're defecating right next in the front door, or they break into your front door. It's a very difficult situation, I understand, but I think there's homeless that need help, and there's some homeless that don't want help. So I hope you really look into the possibility of protecting us all, not just the homeless, because it seems like homeless have more rights than property owners. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I encourage you to really consider unintended consequences of your actions. It's kind of like a balloon you push on this side and it comes out on this side. So if you remove the homeless from the creeks, where they're going to go. And as a downtown property owner, we get our fair share. And, we get a fair share that tend to be local, harassing. It may not be illegal to be homeless, but other actions that they have are, and those should be enforced. You have certain standards that the community should enforce. You shouldn't allow defecating in public, urinating in public, threatening behavior, sleeping on business doorsteps, breaking into buildings, and generally trashing everything. So, I think that it's great that you're trying to figure out what the solution is. All communities are. But I think the one thing, that I've seen success in is the cities that have standards and are willing to enforce them. And that's my charge to you, is you have standards. There are codes about it. Enforce them. It's not illegal to be homeless, but their behavior is. And that's what you need to do. If you want to, there's not enough money to pay for all the housing that everybody wants. An average apartment runs $500,000 to $800,000. You're never going to house all these people, ever. Services are great. Put them into housing where you can. There are people that are working on that. Treatment, but there are a lot of people, they like the life of just being homeless. But that doesn't mean you have to put up with their behavior. And that's what I'm asking you, is have some standards and enforce those standards.
Okay, so then that brings us back to council. I'm sure everybody is going to want to at least express themselves, so I will just start with the first person to put their hand up on the finger, or let me see your hand if there's anybody who wants to speak. Okay, Councilmember Armendariz. Oh, I'm sorry, I looked at her first. Okay, Councilmember Tovar, and then Councilmember Armendariz.
Oh, thank you, Mayor, and thank you everybody who spoke tonight. I think everything that was said tonight, I think all of us up here, we're compassionate to everything that you discussed. And finding the solutions obviously is very difficult. Again, but we have have to start somewhere. This is a question for our city attorney, Andy, and thank you for bringing that. You talked about the lawsuits and setting ourselves up for multiple lawsuits. Andy, the way this ordinance is written currently, do you feel that that's the case? That if we move forward with this, are we putting ourselves in harm's way in regards to lawsuits?
As I've said before, we believe the lawsuit as written is enforceable and is valid and is not unconstitutional. We cannot prevent other people who feel differently from filing a lawsuit if that's what they want to do.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to say, and I said earlier, I mean, again, in reading the ordinance and talking, I mean, again, I'm going to vote in favor of it because, again, it's when this was originally brought up, it was for the safety not only of our kids but also the employees in the community. So that for me takes precedence over this because we need to protect our children. But again, it should not stop us from, again, as was mentioned earlier, working with our county supervisor or whomever we have to work with to get the services that we need out here because it was mentioned earlier that we did not have a homeless sort of advocate group. We did have a homeless ad hoc group that met for a year, and we spoke with many, many different folks. We even spoke with homeless individuals, unhoused individuals, and trying to find the solutions. It was not just a discussion, it was trying to find solutions. And I think the whole committee and the council worked really, really hard to see what we can do currently. And again, unfortunately, we didn't come up with all the solutions, but we came up with some things that we thought that might work. So again, when I look at this, obviously, and I think for me, when you look at this, I look at it again, and I said it earlier, I think it's an opportunity for us, whichever direction this ordinance goes, I think it's an opportunity for us to continue to work directly with the unhoused community. And I appreciate Chief Espinosa for laying that out, because again, I think that was my biggest concern, is the enforcement, because again, I don't want us to mistreat anybody, but I think you laid that out perfectly. So again, I'm going to vote in favor of this ordinance. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Armendariz.
Thank you, Mayor. So I won't be supporting this ordinance as it currently stands. I think it's overreaching. I think it's discriminatory. I think, of course, we protect our schools. Of course, we protect our playgrounds and daycares from criminal behavior. But we do it across the board. We don't make assumptions that the unhoused are the ones who commit every crime. As somebody pointed out, we have tons of people on Megan's list who are in violation, and we've not focused on them in any way, or asked our police department to focus on them. I think that if we are writing a policy that's barely legal, that's barely constitutional, and we're directing staff to do that, we need to stop and take a look at ourselves and say, why are we doing this? What kind of bullies are we being when we're focusing on people who are already downtrodden, already are most marginalized, already living in a way that they don't want to live, already forced to live in poverty, right, on the margins of our community. And we take these actions because we don't want to see poor people. We don't want to see things that offend us or make us reflect on ourselves. And I think that's really evident when we look at what we've invested in. We've invested the most money in police officers. We've invested the most money in dump trucks, and we've invested the most money in staff to pick up trash. Not to do anything substantial to help the homeless or help one person out of living in the camps. So, legal or not, what we're doing is unethical, it's immoral, and our country has a long history of passing laws that, although they are legal, they were inhumane, they were genocidal, they were anti-Native, anti-Black, anti-Mexican, anti-Asian, anti-women, anti-LGBTQ, and I think that this ordinance is discriminatory. I think we're leading ourselves into some expensive litigation, and I myself am going to vote against it, and I hope that you will consider it too.
All right, Councilmember Hilton.
Thank you. Thank you. First off, I am still uncomfortable, like I was on May 15th, with certain parts of this ordinance and supportive of other parts. Not all legislation is perfect. If many of you have followed other legislation here, there's a give, there's a take. Someone mentioned it like a balloon. I believe this one is trying to strike a balance. The scope of the initial language was too big for me. It was too big for many of us back in March, and most of us would not approve it back then, especially when it came to preventing anyone from laying, sitting, sleeping in a park or taking a nap. I appreciate us moving that language when it was discovered during the March 20th meeting by Councilmember Armendariz. But like the chief said and told us on May 15th, the intentions of his officers when it comes to enforcing this in our parks and anywhere else would be through a common sense approach, case-by-case basis, and not profiling. And I'm going to hold them to that. This would allow our unhoused families whose students attend school to enjoy the park while their child goes to school if they wish. It also provides flexibility to our foster youth that attend schools, and maybe they don't want to go home right away after school and enjoy the park. It will allow our youth and residents that don't have a home life that's positive to go home to, whether you're housed or unhoused, affects anyone from east to west. It'll allow them to have the parks as a safe place and a chance away from your life. I get that. When we have a focus on critical safety to our infrastructure, I am supportive of this legislation. This is not an unhoused prevention policy by any means and has a narrow focus compared to what it was before. The burden is on staff to make sure we follow procedures perfectly, or else we'll be subjecting ourselves to litigation. If this piece of legislation needs to change, then I would expect staff to bring that back to us, or a member of this council to bring that back. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Marks.
Define reality resonated with me tonight because this is a reality. And the Boise decision said it's not illegal to camp on government property, but it also went on to say it is illegal to commit crimes. You know, I listened this evening about partnerships, and I really don't see a lot of our partnerships out at Los Animas Park. That park has gotten very sketchy the last 3 weeks. I'm out there 2 to 3 times a week. There's ranting, they're raving, it's very unsafe behavior. There's a woman who chases people out of the dog park and she can only say one word at the top of her lungs and it begins with F. It's something that I would not want my grandchildren to be around. We were even scared when we were accosted on the tennis courts by a man high on drugs 2 weeks ago, and it took 7 officers that arrived to take care of the situation. These are our parks. And, you know, with this decision, I have nothing against an unhoused going in and sitting on a bench, taking a nap on the grass. But I do have a problem with someone who's making our lives dangerous to be out there because of their mental instability. So where do we go from there? Yes, we do have to do something. I'm going to ask my council members and mayor to do something with me. Sylvia Reyes, our supervisor, has to get down here. She has to help us. Because I know Councilmember Rocco and I have asked to meet with her. She's canceled repeatedly. She doesn't come down here. That's a disgrace. Because she was elected to represent every city in her district. We don't need rehab counseling for 1 hour a week or 1 hour a day. We need a facility that really deals with the problem. And they go into training, they get the counseling, they get on proper meds. Let's return these people to society and not just throw them away. I don't know what the answer is, but I am supporting this tonight because our children should not have to be subjected to the violence that has been seen around, especially Gilroy Prep School. When a mother goes to pick up her child and she's faced with a gun at her window, and she wrote to all of us council members about it. So I do believe it happened. That's wrong. And for all the people who are sitting here that, you know, make all these statements, yes, it's sad. I feel sorry for all the people, and I do worry about the women in the encampments. It's not safe, and all of you that have dealings with the encampments, you know it's not safe for the women and the children that are there. But it's also not safe for our children. And no one should have to be afraid to go out of their way to walk their child to a school. And that's what it's become for many of our school campuses. So the people who came here tonight, I'm sure you are the most law-abiding people. I really do. I think your hearts are in the right place, and you're not the ones who are causing the problems. Unfortunately, it's the ones that are committing the crimes, that are screaming, that are out of control, that everyone seems to focus on. So we need help. We just need help.
Councilmember Bracco?
Yes, as some of you may know, I was once homeless, and I was on drugs. I was one of the founding board members of the Compassion Center along with Jan. But to me, the homeless population has changed a lot. I work with homeless folks in my business. There's some that we're able to help. There's some that we have to actually call the police on to remove from the premises because they're violent, they're armed, and the homeless population has refused to police themselves. So now we're left at a point where something needs to be done. The citizens of Gilroy, you say, oh, they're not bothering anybody at the creek. There's people that live along the Bubas Creek, and we hear from them that, their fences are getting on fire. They're climbing over their fence into their backyard. They're harassing them. So something needs to be done. Like Councilmember Mark said, we were working with Supervisor Wasserman when he was our supervisor, trying to start build a facility out at the hospital, because it's all county land out there. And it was moving forward until our new supervisor, we have tried to meet with her, we've called her, she doesn't even return calls. So there's where we need to do something. We need you folks to start calling her office and saying, why aren't you down here? Why aren't you helping us? Because she's not. So that would be good. We do have other supervisors that are willing to help us, that are from other areas, and we're going to be working with them. So I'm going to support this tonight. I think it's a step in the right direction. It's not unconstitutional, I don't believe, because we're not saying you can't camp anywhere. We're saying these areas that like the Bubas Creek, it's a waterway. That water percolates into the ground and we drink that water. So it needs to be protected. There used to be a very substantial steelhead population out there. No more, they're gone. So we need to continue to move forward on this. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Klein?
Thank you, Mayor.
If you have a conversation, could you please take it outside? Okay.
I want to thank everyone for coming tonight and sharing. There is a lot of emotions in this room as we've gathered to discuss these issues that affect us all. Some bring us together and some pull us apart. I'm going to speak for a moment on what should be the guiding principle that brings us together. I believe we are all made in the image of God. I also believe the golden rule, that we are to treat others as we expect to be treated. As a new council member, I swore an oath to support and uphold the Constitution. With that, the laws that make us who we are. These laws are guardrails that provide protection for the civil society that we all live in. And the ordinances we as a council must review and adopt add to the guardrails at a local level. They're not aimed at taking any rights away from anyone. They are put in place to safeguard the community as a whole while seeking ways to help those who are in need. The proposed budget for 2024 and 2025 demonstrate that the city is putting resources in the community in many different ways. But we know the resources are limited, and the times we are living in, the revenue is becoming scarcer, and the needs are getting greater. Our task as a council is to work with staff to figure out ways to work with the local agencies, service providers, and nonprofits who are on the front lines to these challenges. There is a common ground that we share, but we can only find it if we are willing to listen and work together for the betterment of our community.
Councilmember Armendariz, are you speaking again, or did you not raise, lower your hand?
Yeah, I'd like to say something.
Okay.
Yeah, just because I think it's unfair that we speak against a fellow elected person who's not here to speak and defend herself. Supervisor Arenas has been to Gilroy. She has met with numerous community members as soon as, I think she was here during this past couple of weeks at St. Louis Hospital. She's motioned and passed lots of resources to help people in our community, including greater staffing at St. Louis Hospital, and put in motions which are in play currently to get more resources for our community at St. Louis Hospital and at the DePaul Medical Center in Morgan Hill. So I don't think it's fair that we make those statements that are not true. She also has a staff person assigned to our area. And so I think we should be more respectful in that. And regarding this issue in particular, I also think that when we say that we care about the women and children in the camps, I don't think that by voting to push them out further in the margins in our community makes them any safer. I think we're being disingenuous. So again, it's not our place to criminalize people. It's not our place to discriminate against people based on their class or their ability to to have enough money to put a roof over their own heads. And I think we're skating here on really thin ice.
Okay. I'm going to give my comments, which are not too dissimilar to what I said at the last meeting. I do want to thank everybody who has taken the time to write, call, email, come here tonight, speak. I mean, this is what we need. We need the community to come out at the time that we're trying to do something. This is not the first time, though, that we've heard this issue. This has been something, for those who may not be aware, that has been ongoing for about a year at least, starting with our ad hoc committee trying to figure out how to draw the line, so to speak. So we wouldn't be here if that issue were solely sitting, sleeping, lying, or using and carrying or placing personal property in public spaces. We wouldn't. But we're here in response to very real threats to public safety based on numerous reports by residents, school parents, businesses, daycare operators, and to what our city staff has discovered in responding to these complaints and clearing out encampments. This ordinance seeks to balance the ability of all members of the public to use public spaces with safeguards for areas where threats to public safety are the most grave and can cause the most harm. That's what we're trying to do. Do we have a sworn duty to all our residents? Absolutely. Does that mean we look the other way when one causes harm to another? Or when someone compromises the structural integrity of infrastructure we all rely on every day and assume is safe? Our sworn duty is to the safety of the public at large, and for that we have a duty to act when public safety is threatened, and that's what we're trying to do. This council is laser focused on housing. I said this last time. There hasn't been a single housing development proposal to come before us that we denied, this council, since I've been on in 2018. With the exception of the VTA proposed development, because it was to consume a large portion of what is supposed to be our thriving transit center first. And knowing that the county had Measure A dollars set aside for that proposal, we went after those same dollars to get a better housing development that was 100% affordable. There was no market rate housing in it at all, and half of it dedicated solely to very low and extremely low income housing. That is a plus. Yes, we all, when we take office, swear to uphold the Constitution, but our actual our jurisdiction is limited to the city charter. That's what we use as what our jurisdiction allows us to do. That's our primary duty, and that means we're responsible to provide essential city services first. Our police, our fire, emergency medical response, streets, sewer, water, etc. Since last fall, the city administrator and I have toured interim housing sites both inside and outside of Santa Clara County, together with the service providers, so that we could ascertain what it would mean to have such a site in Gilroy. We discovered that maintaining these sites with the level of monitoring and services that are required come at a very steep price tag of over $40,000 per person per year. It's not just about finding a space and saying, go here. You have to provide the services for the people who are going to go there, and that can be indefinite. It's the same with emergency shelters. It's not about just finding a vacant building. We have to know who's going to be staffing it, what service provider is going to be there. Gilroy, like every other city in Santa Clara County except for San Jose, does not have a Department of Social Services. We work with other jurisdictions, namely the county, for matters of public health and social services. In Gilroy, Santa Clara County Housing Authority manages the Housing Choice Voucher Program, known as Section 8, and provides rental assistance for 2,386 Gilroy residents. By allocating the federal Community Development Block Grant, the City of Gilroy provides $140,000 of annual funding for rebuilding Together Silicon Valley to make critical home repairs for safety and accessibility modifications that helps to keep residents, often elderly, from being displaced. In further efforts to protect against displacement and prevent homelessness, the City of Gilroy is dispersing over the next 2 years $474,000 in permanent local housing allocation funding from the state. That money is going specifically, $110,000 over 2 years to St. Joseph's Family Center to provide emergency rental assistance, utility assistance, and other supportive programs that help diminish the risk of becoming homeless. $40,000 over 2 years to Project Sentinel, providing fair housing services and investigating complaints to address housing discrimination for Gilroy residents. $40,000 over 2 years to Project Sentinel for landlord-tenant counseling and dispute resolution program to help resolve housing conflict and protect Gilroy residents from displacement. $40,000 over 2 years to CADAS, Community Agency for Resources, Advocacy, and Services, to provide rental and deposit assistance to prevent homelessness for Gilroy families and individuals. $80,000 over 2 years to South County Compassion Center for services to unhoused Gilroy residents to meet their basic needs and to connect them with services to help them attain permanent housing. $70,000 over 2 years to St. Joseph's Family Center for training and employment readiness to prepare individuals that are homeless or at risk of homelessness for stability and greater self-sufficiency. $54,000 over 2 years. The Health Trust delivers meals to low-income and homebound seniors at risk of food insecurity, allowing them to remain in their homes. And $40,000 over 2 years to Silicon Valley Independent Living Center, providing Gilroy residents with disabilities counseling, emergency rental assistance, housing search services to obtain safe, affordable, and accessible long-term housing. After this agenda item, we will be looking to approve our next 2-year budget. And in there, we will find that we have a 2-person crew that we deploy, if it's all approved, that we deploy weekly to provide citywide trash cleanups, something we've had to address because of all the trash that's around. I want to mention the quality of life officers. We have reports that tell us exactly how many contacts they make with unhoused residents. From January 3rd to May 12th alone, 280 contacts between unhoused and transient population and the quality of life officers. These all work together. I'm not trying to point out any one of these things individually. I'm trying to show you the magnitude and scope of everything that this city is trying to do and does. This council, together with all the mayors of Santa Clara County, sent in a letter of support, and this was organized by San Jose Mayor Matt Mahan, to State Senator Susan Eggman, to encourage conservatorships to come back for the people who are mentally ill and cannot take care of themselves, to bring that back so that we have a way to help people who can't make those, who are mentally ill. I'll leave it at that. And lastly, I want to inform everyone that we are also in our budget creating a housing and community services division and elevating a vacant program administrator position, which is a position we created during the pandemic to help with all these kinds of issues that people needed connections with. This is going to be elevated to a housing and community services manager. And that position will provide a higher level of expertise and focus the division, the Housing and Community Services Division, on housing and unhoused issues, such as implementing projects and programs to address housing needs for a diverse community and provide assistance to families and individuals that are experiencing or at risk of homelessness. This agenda item is about protecting our children and critical public infrastructure from the known issues, activities, and behavior that threaten public safety. This is about achieving balance with attempts to safeguard those spaces where threats to public safety are the most grave and can cause the most harm. It's about respecting our obligations and duty under the city charter and to each other. So I will be supporting this ordinance. Thank you. Okay, I'll make a motion.
Make a motion to read ordinance by title only. Wait for the reading.
Okay, is there a second? We need to do this one at a time, I think. Okay, so the motion to read the ordinance by title and waive for the reading by Councilmember Bracco and seconded by Councilmember Tovar.
Councilmember Almendares?
No.
Councilmember Bracco?
Yes.
Councilmember Klein?
Yes.
Councilmember Hilton?
Aye.
Councilmember Marks?
Yes.
Councilmember Tovar?
Yes.
And Mayor Blankley?
Yes, all right, that passed 6-2.
No, well, there's a problem. Under the charter, that motion has to be unanimous.
Yeah.
And if it's not unanimous, the clerk will have to read the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Gilroy adding Chapter 5 to the City Code relating to banning the use of certain public right-of-ways as sleeping or living accommodations.
I don't understand.
Well, what I'm saying is, under the charter, the ordinance must be read unless the council members present unanimously vote not to read it and to waive the reading. The council may want to reconsider this motion that was just made, if that's true.
Yes.
Well, if Councilmember Armendariz is willing to reconsider it and re-vote on this motion, then that could be done. Otherwise, the clerk will have to read the ordinance.
Because this is just about reading it.
It's just about reading the ordinance. It has nothing to do with passing the ordinance.
I am not. Read it. Okay, he'll need to read it.
One moment here, Madam Mayor. Ordinance number 23-XX, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Gilroy adding Chapter 5 to the Gilroy City Code relating to banning the use of certain public right-of-way as sleeping or living accommodations. Whereas the City Council of the City of Gilroy, known as City, has considered the report from city staff and all public comments, if any, on the need to enact an ordinance in accordance with prohibiting the use of public right-of-way as living or sleeping or living accommodations. And whereas the city finds that it has legitimate and compelling interest in protecting the public health, welfare, and safety of its residents, as well as preserving the same within the city, its parks and other public property, and whereas the city must appropriately consider various interests and formulate policy to best protect public health, safety, welfare, property, and the environment with limited resources, and where the City Council acknowledges the lack of nightly shelter beds and housing currently available regionally and recognizes the systemic lack of state and federal investment in shelter and public health services for those experiencing homelessness, and whereas the City Council acknowledges that it is currently unavoidable that some people would lie or shelter for survival outdoors until they are able to access affordable or free shelter or housing. In Gilroy, this has typically meant sheltering, sometimes for extended periods of time, on city right-of-ways and city property, and at times on other agencies' property, and whereas the public right-of-way and public properties are generally intended for the public use and travel, the City Council is the authority for public rights-of-way within the city. As such, the city must consider the safety of motorists and pedestrians traveling on roadways and sidewalks, including to and from neighboring properties, businesses, and residences. The city has had increasing concerns regarding safety due to camping on or in rights-of-way and public property in or near streets, roads, sidewalks, and public access points. And whereas the safety and protection of the most vulnerable population in Gilroy, children, is paramount concern to the City Council. And whereas the City Council has heard reports from residents of negative interactions between those using public right-of-ways as sleeping and living accommodations and children traveling on path towards and near located schools and parks. And whereas the city has also been made aware of instances where encampment locations near bridges and in creeks have resulted in damaging activities that, if it had left unaddressed, could have resulted in eventual infrastructure failure that would have negatively impacted public safety. And Whereas the City Council recognizes the difficult challenge of balancing the needs of the residents and public at large to access clean and sanitary public areas, as well as the assurance of safe travel with the needs of individuals who have no alternatives for living accommodations and the storage of their personal property, but also balancing those needs with the concerns of residents that use such property as living and sleep accommodations, and strong personal properties interferes with the rights of other members of the public to use of public areas for the intended purposes and can create a public health or safety hazard that adversely affects those who use public use areas. Whereas the city has determined that the ordinance is necessary to the public health, welfare, and safety of residents of the city by enacting regulatory restrictions on using public right-of-ways for sleeping and living accommodations at designated locations. And whereas the city will maintain a map showing portions of the city impacted by this ordinance, including and attached as attachment A to this resolution. And whereas the area affected by this ordinance accounts for 24.4% of the total area of the city, leaving a large majority of the city's total area, 75.6% in total, unaffected by this ordinance. And whereas the city now desires to proceed with the process of enacting this ordinance for the purpose of protection of the public health, welfare, and safety of its residents. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Gilroy does hereby ordain as follows. Section 1. The foregoing recitals are true and correct and are incorporated herein in this reference. Section 2. Chapter 5 of the Gilroy City Code shall be added to read as follows. Chapter 5. Ban on the use of certain areas of public right-of-way as sleeping or living accommodations. 5.1. Definitions. Definitions contained in section shall govern the construction, meaning, and application of word and phrases used in this chapter and shall not apply to any other chapter of the Gilroy City Code. Subsection A. City employee means any part-time employee of the City of Gilroy. Section B. Personal property means any tangible property and includes but is not limited to goods, material, merchandise, tents, tarpaulins, bedding, sleeping bags, hammocks, sheds, structures, mattresses, couches, chairs, other furniture, appliances, and personal items such as household items, luggage, backpacks, clothing, documents, and medication. Section C. Public right-of-way means all property that is owned, managed, or maintained by the city, or where the city possesses a property interest allowing public use of such property, such as right-of-way interest, and shall include, but not limited to, any public street, space, ground, building, or infrastructure. Section D. Sidewalk means that the portion of the street, other than the pavement, is set apart by curbs, barriers, markings, or other delineation for pedestrians' travel. Section E. Street means a way, a place, or whatever nature, publicly maintained and open to use of public for purposes or vehicular travel or parking, and includes every highway, avenue, lane, alley, court, place, squares, sidewalk, parking lot, parkways, curves, bikeway, or other public way in the city which has been or may hereafter be dedicated and open to public use, or such property, public property so designated in any law of the state. Section F. 10 means a collapsible shelter made of fabric or a tarp stretched and thus sustained by supports, which is not open on all sides and which hinders all unobstructed view behind or into the area surrounded by the fabric. Section 5.2, prohibition of using public right-of-way as sleeping or living accommodations. A, parks and playgrounds. No person shall obstruct by sitting, lying, or sleeping, or by storing, using, maintaining, or placing personal property on a street, sidewalk, or a public right-of-way in the following locations where it reasonably appears in light of all the circumstances. The participants in conducting these activities are in fact using the area as a living or sleeping or living accommodations regardless of the intent of the participants or the nature of any other activities in which they may also be engaging. 1. Within 500 feet of any park or playground. This prohibition applies all year, overnight, on any weekends and weekdays, even when such facilities may be generally considered closed. B. Other public rights-of-way. No person shall obstruct by sitting, lying, or sleeping, or by storing, using, maintaining, or placing personal property on street, sidewalk, or other public right-of-way in the following locations. 1. In a manner that impedes passage as provided by the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, Pub.L. number 101-336, 104 Stat 328/1990 as amended from time to time. 2, within 500 feet of any school or their daycare facility, this prohibition applies all year, overnight, on any weekends and weekdays, even when such facilities may generally consider closed. 3, within 100 feet of critical infrastructure, including water wells, storm drain basins, railways, bridges, and under and overpasses. 4, in any manner that obstructs or unreasonably interferes with the use of right-of-way or any activity for which the city has issued a permit. 7, in a manner that obstructs any portion of any street or other public right-of-way open use by motor vehicles, including any portions there marked as a bike lane. 8, city creeks and creek embankments within Gilroy city limits. 5.3, penalties. A violation of this section involving a person who willfully resists, delays, or obstructs a city employee from enforcing this section or willfully refuses to comply after being requested to do so by a city employee shall be punishable as a misdemeanor. All other violations of this section shall be enforceable only as infractions pursuant to Gilroy City Code Section 1.7 or by issuance of an administrative citation pursuant to Gilroy City Code Section 6A.13. Section 3. If any section, subsection, sentence, clause, or phrase of this ordinance is for any reason held to be invalid or unconstitutional, such decision shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of this ordinance. The City Council of the City of Gilroy hereby declares that it would have passed and adopted this ordinance and each section, subsection, sentence, clause, or phrase hereof, irrespective of the fact that any one or more sections, subsections, sentences, clause, or phrases may be declared invalid or unconstitutional. Section 4. This ordinance shall take effect in 30 days after its adoption. The city clerk is hereby directed to publish this ordinance or a summary thereof pursuant to Government Code Section 36933.
That's it.
Okay, thank you. So now do we have a second motion then for the second part of this?
Yes, so moved.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Bracco and seconded by Councilmember Tovar to introduce an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Gilroy adding Chapter 5 to the Gilroy City Code relating to banning the use of certain public rights-of-way as sleeping or living accommodations. And this is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Armendariz?
No?
Councilmember Bracco?
Yes.
Councilmember Klein?
Yes.
Councilmember Hilton?
Aye.
Councilmember Marks?
Yes.
Councilmember Tovar?
Yes.
And Mayor Lundberg.
Yes, and that passes 6-1.